Welcome back to the Mental Playbook podcast. I am here with Reshma Kearney, trauma-informed yoga teacher and mindful healing guide. Hi, Reshma, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm really glad to have you on, and we're going to talk about something that might be difficult for people. It's definitely difficult for me as someone who's dealt with loss, but I think it's really important to understand what are the ways we can navigate loss and understand grief. And I'm curious to hear your perspective, but could you first share a little bit about your journey and what led you to specialize in grief, trauma, and mindfulness?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Um, I my journey started when I lost my husband Sean to suicide in 2022. And when I lost him, my kids were 10, 8, and a brand new 7. And our world turned upside down. We had no idea that he was in that state of mind, that he was hurting that deeply inside. And I kind of took a break from life for a year and a half. I just focused on my kids, myself, all the things that you have to do after you lose somebody. And in the beginning stages, I really let go of myself. I focused purely on my kids, wanted them to get connected to all the resources they needed, wanted to bring them back to a normal life. And over time, I realized that that wasn't doing any good for myself. And in turn, it wasn't actually creating the safe healing space that I intended on creating for the kids. And so I soon realized that I needed the mindfulness practices that we had used earlier, years before Sean died, during the peak of COVID, back in my life. I needed to go back to those practices of daily grounding. I needed to come back to my breath, my body, myself, in order to really take care of the kids the way that I wanted to. And I said that I took a year and a half off. After that year and a half, I realized we were healing. We were beginning to heal and we were doing better. And I wanted to share that with other people. So I started sharing on Instagram what our family had been through, how it had affected me and my children, and started touching on the practices that were helping us cope. Grief is a whole body experience and affects more than just our heart and our mind. And I learned that through my journey and then continued to learn more as I got trained in yoga, I got trauma informed, and just being surrounded by so many really smart educators in the grief space. It's kind of evolved over time.
Yeah, and can you share a little bit more about what grief means to you?
Yeah, grief is a whole body, whole life response to loss. And loss isn't just death. Loss can be a change in your life, a big transition. It can be the loss of a relationship, loss of your identity because of a change or transition, right? Loss of health. And so grief is more than just sadness. It also doesn't follow a neat timeline like some of us think it does, and it just looks a lot different than expected. It's so individual.
Yeah. Um, Before we dive more into, I want to talk about the stages of grief, but what are some misconceptions you've kind of heard about when it comes to grieving a loss?
Yeah, well, actually, you mentioned the stages of grief, and I don't know if you're referring to the 5 stages that we
Yeah.
hear about. So
Yeah.
that is a misconception about grief. I don't know who, and I don't know all the details, but from what I've read, that idea of the 5 stages of grief came about years ago when somebody was working with terminally ill patients. So it's more about the 5 stages of grief for those who were near death, not for those who were surviving the loss of somebody. So a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah,
I
I
didn't
didn't know
know
that.
that initially, but I think it's so important to know that because it takes the pressure of this already devastating, life-changing experience off of our shoulders, right? And it removes comparison in our own grief journey. So, I think, I don't know all the stages, but I think there's like acceptance, anger, denial, right? So the thing is, the reality of grief is that you move through these emotions all the time. It's not linear. You can be angry in month three, and then anger can come back in year three. You can feel like you've accepted it, and then you hit a milestone moment with your family, and you're back to not accepting or to denying. Um, so there's so much fluctuation in all the emotions that are associated with grief.
Yeah, I know. And I've heard that like it doesn't come in a particular order. Um, but just having that the five stages, I think it's like denial, bargaining, anger, depression, and acceptance, kind of like you said. Um, but just having that as an expectation when it comes to a loss is a little I guess it's more difficult because then you feel like you should be feeling these things. But I'm glad you brought that up as a misconception. And another thing I want to talk about is you have kids, and I'm
Mhm.
curious to know how grief looks like for children, teens, and adults.
Yeah, kids' grief looks a lot different than adults' grief. And often when we don't know that, especially as parents, we're questioning whether or not we're doing it right. We're questioning if our kids are doing it right. We're questioning if they're normal. Um, but it looks so different. Kids can move in and out of grief, whereas we kind of feel it just day in and day out. Kids can show grief in play or behavior without verbal expression, whereas, we carry it internally and we may be more vocal about it. It weighs on us heavily for a longer duration of time. Kids can have outbursts one moment and then be fine the next, or they can be fine all day and then at night they're having a meltdown. So there's a lot of differences between how kids and adults grieve. Adults probably know that, there is meaning to find in the loss and they might expect to find it or work toward finding meaning. Whereas kids don't understand that and they'll ask the same question over and over and over again, right? We might think that grief has like a linear, most of us know that it's not, but many adults might expect that it's linear, whereas kids are just up and down all the time. Unfortunately, kids just don't have the experience or the language to really understand what's happening in their bodies when they're grieving, and also to understand how to speak on it and ask for help.
Yeah, and so how can we approach our kids, I guess, when it comes to grieving a loss?
Yeah, I always say lead with heart and honesty. I think that when you let kids know that you are a safe space for them, it makes it easier for them to really feel their feelings without judging them and without fearing that they'll be judged for them. And we can do that with words, but we can also do that with behavior. We can model that for them. So in my case, it was imperative that I show them exactly how I'm feeling in every moment that I'm feeling it. So it could have been sadness, they see me crying. It could have been anger, they see me getting frustrated or yelling, or, I would even say that I'm angry today because I'm alone, or I'm angry that dad died, And I think when I'm able to say that openly and show them that I'm okay with all those feelings and I still love myself, then they feel safe in their own feelings.
Yeah. And after experiencing your loss, did you ever, I guess, feel guilty or blame? And yeah, was that a part of your journey at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Definitely felt guilty. I didn't see any signs in the way that we hear about signs around suicide loss. There was no talking about death or leaving us. There was no disconnecting or giving things away. I didn't see any of that in my husband. I knew he had depression and anxiety. I supported him the best that I could, but at the end of the day, you can't drag someone into a therapist's office, or you can't force somebody to go talk to a doctor or a counselor or get medication. So it took me a long time to realize that it was okay to feel guilt, but that I didn't need to feel guilt. I know now that I did the best that I could at that time, knowing what I knew. Of course, if I had known that this was what was going to happen, I would have tried even harder. Maybe I would have called somebody to come to our home or found a different way to connect him with help. But unfortunately, he didn't want help.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't want help. It's hard for someone to say that they're having a hard time, and it's even harder for them to reach out for help, especially men. And in Sean's case, especially men in the military and in medicine. So, yeah, I had a lot of guilt, but I've come to a place of peace with that now.
Yeah. And recently, and just for years as well in sports, especially at the professional level, we've been seeing more public conversations, I guess, around mental health and suicide loss. From your perspective, what do people struggle with when it comes to grief?
I think that in the case of like high performers, high achievers, whether it's like athletes or like my husband, someone, he was an orthopedic surgeon in the army. Um, I think that grief, I think that people in those positions tend to push away the feelings of grief because they think they need to just keep going. There's like this underlying expectation in these different fields that people should just keep going, pushing through whatever is hard because on the outside you look like you're strong and capable, right? But grief affects everybody. It's an internal thing. It's a bodily response to loss and even mental health struggles.
Yeah. And so you brought up like seeking help and how difficult it is, but for those people who are struggling, um, how can we approach them and how can they kind of support themselves versus like isolating themselves?
Yeah, I think when we're supporting somebody who's struggling, it's probably the most valuable for them to just hold space for them and to let them feel seen and heard. And someone's not going to feel seen and heard when we're immediately giving them a list of things to do and we're trying to get them here and there and, fix their grief, right? We just want to hold space for them. And that's something I learned from my own experience with Sean. As a wife, as a mother, as a woman, the minute I saw him struggling, I wanted to help him. And yeah, I wanted to fix it. And now looking back, I realized that all he really needed was for me to just hold space. For someone who is struggling, I think that one of the reasons, apart from having this expectation that they have to keep going, one of the reasons it's hard for them to ask for help is because often they think it's like this big thing they have to do, right? When you're struggling mentally, you think, okay, I have to start therapy. I have to go see a doctor. I have to do yoga and get outside. And it's not like that. It really can begin with just one simple step. And I think the best first step is to just reach out and just reach out to one person, maybe a trusted friend or another trusted adult, maybe a mental health professional or a counselor. But healing truly begins with connection. We can't do it alone. We cannot do it in isolation. And if more people understood that it just takes one connection, one form of connection, one relationship, and it doesn't have to be with somebody else, it could even be just one daily grounding practice every day to connect with yourself,
Yeah.
because our relationship to ourself is just as important as our relationship with other people, if not more important.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because some people don't have support systems or a connection, someone they can kind of trust. So really bringing it back to themselves is important too.
Yeah.
So personally, when I've experienced loss, one of the biggest fears for me was forgetting like the memories and the moments with that loved one. But what are some other fears and how can we combat them?
The biggest fear people have is that once they start to feel joy, it means that they have forgotten their person or that they don't love their person or miss their person as much as they should. And so we have to understand that grief and joy can exist together on the same healing journey. And we deserve that. We're still here, and there's so much life to live, and there's so much joy to feel, even in the smallest moments.
Yeah. And what are some ways we can kind of find that joy when we're stuck in that, I guess, um, dark space?
I've always been a big fan of gratitude practices, whether it's journaling gratitude, just three things you're grateful for that happened in the last 24 hours. And it doesn't have to be like, I got a new job or, I you know, made X amount of money or something huge happened. Really small things. Like for me in the morning, I look back at the day before and it's something like everybody enjoyed dinner last night. We got through the day without a big meltdown. Something small, because when you start tracking the small moments, they start to add up. And then you start to feel and seek and find the bigger moments of joy, right? So joy is everywhere around us. We just have to accept that sometimes it comes in really small forms.
Yeah. And then how can we like make time to take care of ourselves, especially when the focus can be making sure like that everyone else is okay, along with like keeping up with school and work and just life.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of habit stacking. A lot of the work I do with clients and women and families involves looking at their day. It's not about giving you like this template or this list of practices and sending you off. We're looking at your personal individual day and finding moments in which you can add in
Mm.
a practice. And practices are not they're not meant to be 1 hour long or 2 hours long. It can be as short as 1 minute. Um, Research has shown that just 1 minute of stillness and focus on breath can help calm the body and the mind. So, looking in your day, like when you wake up in the morning, you get out of bed, you brush your teeth. Maybe while you're brushing your teeth, you say three statements of gratitude in your mind, right? Or as you're making your tea or your coffee in the morning, you can do it at that time, or you take a deep breath and just do that for a minute. Get outside, put your bare feet on the ground, and just look up at the sun for 2 minutes. So they're really simple practices. It's just about finding what works for you and what's sustainable in your day.
Yeah, I like that. And what is your mental playbook that keeps you going through all the challenges that life brings?
My mental playbook includes breath awareness, movement, connection, gratitude, like I said, um, and stillness, just allowing myself to be with myself, with my thoughts and my emotions, really sitting with my grief. You don't have to sit in it and feel stuck in it, but you have to sit with it um, to help process and start to take the first step forward in healing.
Yeah. And are these some things that you do with your children as well?
I do, yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, the kids and I had a yoga and mindfulness practice in place years before Sean died. We started doing it during the peak of the pandemic when we were all quarantined and I was homeschooling three of them as ways to break up the day.
Yeah.
And it really made a difference in the energy in our home. So we still practice what works for us. So my son is 14 now. He can hold a lot of anger when he's in the thick of it. And so for him, it's all about movement.
Mhm.
It's all about coming back to his breath at nighttime to help him unwind and get to sleep. My middle one is what I call a quiet griever, not very expressive, holds it all in. And so for her, journaling has been really helpful. And it's been good for me too because I can peek in her journal
Mhm.
and kind of see where she's at. And she knows that I do that, or she'll share with me. I think for her, it's easier to just share with me her writing than say it to my face.
Yeah.
And then my youngest is a free-spirited, like flower child, loves to be barefoot outside, touching rocks and sticks. So when I see that she's kind of in a tough spot, that I know immediately we need to get outside.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's all about what works for you, and it takes time to learn what works for you because initially I might have tried to do the same thing with all three of them, but I learned that it doesn't work that way. And that has been really important for our family to realize and accept that each of us is grieving a lot differently from the other one. And so we have to just hold space for each other, and let each other know that, we support them, even though it looks different for each of us.
Right. I'm glad you identified those, I guess, ways that I guess each of your children handle emotions differently. I think for me, I think I'm a quiet griever, so I like to keep things in. And I've actually practiced journaling, which has been helping, and then I've been trying to do like meditation when I can in the morning. But just noticing that, and I'm curious to know as well, like not just with children, but like friends too. Like, how do you kind of learn how those can different people and connections deal with their emotions to know the best way to support them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that, sometimes it's okay to just ask, what do you need? And I know that a lot of times when people are grieving, it's really hard to say
Yeah.
what you need, but even if they don't answer, just letting them know that you're there to support them and, you're there to give them whatever they need in the moment. Um, I think that you can sense when somebody wants to talk and when they don't. And that's okay. And I think just maintaining presence is the most important thing, just letting them know that you are there for them. So I remember in the first few months, I didn't necessarily want to talk to people,
Yeah.
but I really appreciated going to bed at night and seeing text messages with some people saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about you." Some people saying, "I'd like to bring you something tomorrow." And then I even had a friend who would just send a heart emoji every day for almost a year. And that meant so much. So I guess it's hard to really know, but I think that if you just hold space for people and maintain presence, you at least give them the opportunity to reach out if they feel ready to, if and when they feel ready to.
Yeah. And so how can my listeners learn more about you and get the support they need?
I'm on Instagram under Reshma Kearney, and I'm really good about being in touch through DMs. I also have a website under my full name. And then just in terms of reaching out for support, whether it's me or somebody else, just take that first step and believe that people want to help you. I
Yeah.
think that we think everybody's really busy and nobody has time, but if you make that intentional effort to let someone know you're having a hard time and ask for help, there's going to be at least one person who wants to be there for you.
Yeah. I know it's hard because sometimes you can feel like you're a burden on someone else. But yeah, just knowing that people are there to support you is important as well.
Mhm.
So when you're not working or you're not with your kids, what do you enjoy doing?
Oh my gosh, like the 2 hours I'm not with my kids. I love going to the beach. I live in Southern California, so the beach is like 20, 30 minutes away. I love hiking and going to the yoga studio. Um, I love being with my girlfriends
Yeah.
and just, being silly.
Yeah. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
My last question for you is what matters most to you? The destination, the journey, or the company, and why?
Mhm. I'd say the journey. Because the journey includes the other two. Um, the journey for me has very much included connection with other people. More importantly, it has included connection to myself. It has been a really difficult journey and one that I was not prepared for. But through it, I've learned that healing is possible even when you think it's not.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of how far I've come. I'm proud of how far my children have come. And I know that we're going to be okay. We're always going to miss, love, and honor their dad, my husband. But we're going to move forward in honor of him.
Yeah, I love the way you said that. But thank you so much, Rishma, for joining me and having this conversation. I am sorry for your loss, and I
Thank you.
appreciate to hear your insight and that you're supporting yourself, your kids, and others. I think it's really nice because social media, obviously, there's pros and cons of it, but making space for others and for yourself to share your journey is really important because then other people can relate and also get the support they need as well.
Yeah,
So,
that's the intention. Thank you. I'm really proud of you and the work that you're doing. I think it's really important that you're creating the space for young adults, and specifically for athletes and other high performers. It's needed.
yeah, thank you. To my listeners, mind strong, game on.